Do you believe horrifying secrets could be hiding inside your own home? Today's story might make you think twice before sleeping with the lights off. If you're into twisted, suspenseful true crime cases like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment. You won't want to miss how this ends. The night shift at Jefferson General was always a grind, but tonight felt heavier than usual. The emergency room buzzed with tension, the kind that never quite let up. Madeline Carter, a 28-year-old medical resident 3 years into her program, moved with automatic precision between patients, clipboard in one hand and a cup of black hospital coffee in the other. Her dark brown hair was tied up in a tired bun, loose strands framing a face etched with exhaustion. She hadn't sat down in hours. Her sneakers squeaked faintly against the linoleum floor as she made her way back to the nurse's station, hoping for 5 minutes of peace before the next wave of injuries rolled in. Dr. Carter called Nancy, the charge nurse, holding out a file. "You've got a laceration in cubicle 3. Work-related. Big guy. Looks like he got into a fight with an engine." Madeline sighed, took the chart, and walked briskly toward the curtained-off space. Inside sat a man who looked like he could lift a truck with his bare hands. Broad shoulders, forearms like cinder blocks, and a calm expression that didn't quite match the deep crimson stain soaking through the towel wrapped around his arm. Grease still clung to his hands. There was something solid and immovable about him, like the kind of man who fixed things for a living and didn't flinch when things broke. "Evening," Madeline said, snapping on a pair of gloves. "I'm Dr. Carter. Let's take a look at that cut." "Name's Hank Hale," the man said, eyes drifting to her badge as she knelt beside him. "Had a run-in with a stubborn drive shaft. Nothing serious." "I'll be the judge of that," she replied, unwrapping the soaked towel slowly and revealing a jagged gash running along his forearm. "It would definitely need stitches, maybe 10, maybe 12. She didn't like the way the skin puckered near the tendons. "You a mechanic?" she asked, grabbing gauze from the tray. "Been running Hale Auto for 25 years, he said, voice gruff but friendly. "South side of town. You might have passed the sign, Hale and Son." The name clicked immediately. Her hands froze mid-motion. "Hale? As in Brandon Hale?" He nodded. "My boy. Tall. Wears a tie too often for his own good. Says he's marrying some hotshot doctor." "You?" Madeline laughed nervously. "Yeah, that would be me." "Well, damn," Hank said with a grin. "Ain't this something? World sure likes to throw people together in strange ways." Madeline forced a polite smile and resumed cleaning the wound. She felt his gaze on her, not casual, but searching, like he was studying more than just her name tag. "Brandon's shown me pictures," he added after a pause. "Didn't quite do you justice. You're a pretty girl, Dr. Carter. My son always had good taste." She didn't respond. Compliments from patients weren't uncommon, but this one slid under her skin. Something in his tone, offhand but heavy, made her stomach twist. "You're gonna need a few stitches," she said, switching gears. "I'll numb the area. Call me Hank," he said, still smiling. "We're practically family now, aren't we?" She gave a tight nod, reached for the syringe, and administered the local anesthetic in silence. As she worked, Hank barely flinched. His calm unnerved her. He had the air of someone who'd been through worse and didn't feel pain the way other people did. When she finished and wrapped the arm neatly, he stood with surprising ease. "Thanks, Doc," he said, slipping his jacket back on. "Guess we'll be seeing more of each other soon." She didn't reply, just nodded, watching him walk out the doors with a strange heaviness pressing on her chest. Later that night, back in the break room, she sat staring into her cold coffee. Something about Hank Hale didn't sit right with her. Maybe it was the way he looked at her. Too long, too familiar. Or maybe it was just the exhaustion clouding her judgment. Still, deep down, she felt it. That subtle, crawling instinct she'd learned not to ignore. She shook it off. She had no idea that tonight was only the beginning, and that Hank Hale's wound wasn't the only one that would leave a scar. The Hale residence sat on the edge of town in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood where everyone kept their lawns manicured and their mailboxes freshly painted. A classic two-story colonial with blue shutters and a wraparound porch, the house exuded comfort and tradition, just like Brandon said it would. But as Madeline stepped out of Brandon's car, suitcase in hand, something about the place gave her pause. "You're gonna love it here," Brandon said, unloading her duffel from the trunk. "Big rooms, lots of light, and Dad's pretty hands-off." We'll hardly see him. Hank Hale appeared at the doorway right on cue, wiping his hands on a rag and smiling wide. Well, look what the cat dragged in, he said, stepping onto the porch. Welcome home, sweetheart. Madeline tried to smile back, though it felt stiff. Thanks, Mr. Hale. Hank, he corrected. If we're all sharing a roof, we might as well drop the formalities. He took her suitcase with one hand like it weighed nothing. His other arm, freshly stitched, still bore a faint bandage where she'd patched him up the week before. He barely winced as he carried the bag inside. The inside of the house was as warm and clean as Brandon had promised. Framed photos of his mother lined the walls, a smiling brunette in various stages of life. Wedding day, holiday parties, hugging a young Brandon in the backyard. She picked everything, Brandon said quietly, noticing her gaze. Even after she passed, Dad didn't change a thing. It's like she's still here. Madeline nodded. It was beautiful, but it felt frozen in time. Their room was on the second floor, Brandon's childhood bedroom, now with a larger bed and a few new touches. Hank's bedroom was down the hall, on the opposite side of the staircase. A good distance. Enough for privacy. The first few days passed without incident. Madeline spent most of her time working double shifts at the hospital. When she got home, she'd collapse onto the bed, dead to the world. Brandon, in turn, worked long hours on a new commercial project in Kansas City. That first week, they barely had time to unpack. But then Brandon's travel picked up. The architecture firm needed him in Chicago, then Dallas. Before long, his visits home became quick weekends and late-night calls. I hate leaving you, he told her one night while packing another suitcase. But once this project's done, I'm cutting way back. Promise. She kissed him goodbye and waved from the porch as he drove off, swallowing the gnawing discomfort building in her gut. That night, she ate dinner with Hank for the first time without Brandon there. He grilled steaks out back and opened a bottle of bourbon. Just one glass to celebrate the house being full again, he said with a wink. They sat at the kitchen table, the silence stretching too long between bites. So, he began, sipping his drink. You like it here so far? Madeline nodded. It's peaceful, quieter than my old place. Good, Hank said, eyes lingering. You belong in a real home. The words struck her as strange, but she let them slide. She was too tired to read into them. After dinner, she escaped to her room and locked the door, not because she felt afraid, exactly, but because something in Hank's tone had shifted from friendly to something else. Something she couldn't quite name. Days turned to weeks. Brandon's absences lengthened, and Madeline found herself in the house alone with Hank more and more often. He'd pop into the kitchen when she was cooking, compliment her perfume, stand too close. Once, she came downstairs in scrubs and found him in the living room, watching old family tapes. Her face flashed on the screen from a photo Brandon had shown him. Hank didn't even look away. You really are a beautiful girl, Maddie, he said softly. She laughed awkwardly, mumbled something about getting to work, and left the room. But the knot in her stomach stayed. Late that night, she lay in bed, unable to sleep. Something about the way he said her name, the way his eyes trailed down her frame. It wasn't right. It wasn't fatherly. It wasn't safe. The next morning, she took her first sleeping pill, half a tablet, just as prescribed. She didn't know it then, but that small decision, made from exhaustion and unease, would change everything. The sleeping pills worked, at least at first. The first night Madeline took half a tablet, she fell into a blissfully deep sleep. No tossing, no staring at the ceiling for hours, no restless legs or 3 a.m. panic spirals. She woke up just before her alarm, a little groggy, but more rested than she had in weeks. By the third night, she was taking a full tablet. By the fifth, she barely remembered falling asleep at all. The pills had done their job too well. At first, she chalked it up to side effects, heaviness in her limbs, vivid dreams she couldn't fully recall, a slight disorientation when she woke up. Nothing alarming, just the standard adjustments that came with sleep medication. But then it got strange. One morning, she woke up with her nightshirt twisted around her waist and her sheets half on the floor. Another time, she found the bedroom window cracked open when she was certain she had closed it the night before. Then came the bruises, small ones at first, faint discolorations along her thighs, hips, and upper arms. They didn't hurt, but they were there. She stared at them in the mirror one morning before work, her toothbrush still in hand, her face pale. Did I sleepwalk? She wondered. Did I fall out of bed? She shrugged it off. She was tired, overworked. Her immune system was shot. And maybe she banged herself into the dresser or the edge of the sink and just didn't remember. Stress did strange things to the body. She knew that better than anyone. Still, the unease lingered. At work, her colleague Dr. Lena Morales, a sharp-tongued infectious disease resident, noticed the shadows under her eyes. "You look like hell," Lena said, handing Madeline a coffee during their shared shift in the ER. "Seriously, go sleep for a week." "I'm trying," Madeline muttered. "You want anything?" "Prescription sleep aids." Lena raised an eyebrow. "Be careful. I had a patient once who woke up in her neighbor's kitchen trying to cook eggs. No memory of it. Some of those meds mess with your REM cycle." Madeline laughed weakly, but her stomach tightened. "Yeah, I'll keep an eye on it." A few days later, the symptoms escalated. Fever, night sweats, fatigue that sleep didn't fix. Her muscles ached, and her throat felt sore no matter how much water she drank. On her lunch break, she leaned against the break room wall and closed her eyes for just a second. When she opened them, 15 minutes had passed. "You okay?" Lena asked, her voice laced with concern. "Just a summer bug, I think. You've been run down for weeks. Get tested." "Full panel." Madeline nodded. She already planned to. Brandon had suggested they redo their full blood work ahead of the wedding, just as a precaution, part of a prenuptial health agreement. It was routine, but a whisper in her mind began to grow louder. Something's not right. Not with your body. Not with the house. Not with Hank. Back home, she barely touched the dinner Hank had prepared. His gaze tracked her across the kitchen like a hunting dog waiting for a signal. The smell of whiskey lingered faintly on his breath. "You okay, darling?" he asked. "You're looking pale lately." "Just tired," she said quickly. "Long shift." "You sure that's all it is?" He said it like he already knew it wasn't. That night, she took her pill, locked her door, and pushed a chair against it for good measure. But when she woke the next morning, the chair was moved, just slightly, but enough. Enough to know she hadn't imagined it. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. A week later, the test results came in. She had just finished patching up a teenage boy's broken hand when the nurse found her in the hallway. "Dr. Carter, Dr. Linwood wants to see you. Says it's urgent." She walked into his office with a confused smile. Then he said the words that shattered her world. "Your HIV panel came back positive." Madeline didn't speak, didn't breathe. "That can't be right," she whispered. "We ran it twice," Linwood said gently. "There's no mistake." She felt the walls closing in. The clipboard fell from her hands and hit the floor with a dull thud. "I haven't," she stammered. "I've only been with Brandon." Linwood nodded solemnly. "Which means we need to talk to him too. And anyone else you may have come into contact with recently." But Madeline wasn't listening anymore. Her mind had already gone somewhere else. Somewhere darker. Somewhere with oil-stained hands and a crooked smile. And for the first time, she whispered it aloud in her mind. "Hank." The ride home from the hospital was a blur. Madeline gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. The sun was setting over the horizon, casting a burnt orange glow across the quiet Missouri backroads, but she barely noticed. Her thoughts were a chaotic, pulsing storm. HIV positive. Only partner. Brandon. No transfusions. No needle sticks. No accidents. So how the hell did this happen? There was only one possible answer, and it terrified her more than the diagnosis itself. Hank. The moment she stepped into the house, her senses went into overdrive. The place felt the same, quiet, clean, polished, but now it had a sinister undertone. The walls seemed too silent, the shadows too deep. She moved like a ghost through the hallway, not bothering to take off her coat. Hank was in the garage. She could hear the faint thud of a wrench on metal. Brandon had called earlier. He'd be stuck in Chicago for 3 more days. That meant 3 more nights. 3 more chances for Hank to. No, not again. Madeline went straight to her bedroom, locked the door, and pulled the blinds shut. Then she opened her laptop and typed into the search bar. Hidden camera bedroom motion activated discreet. Dozens of options popped up, spy cams disguised as alarm clocks, USB chargers, even wall hooks. Her hands trembled as she scrolled. She didn't want to do this. She didn't want proof. But she needed it. One listing caught her eye. Mini button cam, motion activated, 12-hour battery, same-day delivery. It looked small enough to hide between books, and the reviews mentioned clear night vision. She clicked buy now. When the package arrived the next afternoon, She signed for it with a practiced smile, then hurried back inside like she was hiding contraband. Her hands felt numb as she unboxed it. The device was barely the size of a dime, with a black lens almost invisible to the naked eye. That night, she placed it carefully on the bookshelf, wedged between a thick Gray's Anatomy volume and a dusty copy of Pride and Prejudice she hadn't touched in years. The lens faced the bed directly. A perfect view. She tested the motion sensor, synced it with her phone, and made sure it was charged. Then she waited. Dinner with Hank was unbearable. He asked too many questions, smiled too long, and offered her wine with that familiar too-sweet voice. "You sure you're okay?" he asked, passing the mashed potatoes. "You've been real quiet lately." "I'm fine," she lied. "Just tired. Still taking those pills." She paused, the fork halfway to her mouth. "Yeah." He nodded slowly, like he already knew the answer. That night, she double-checked the lock on her door, slid the chair beneath the knob again, and took her pill. The usual dose. Her body craved rest, but her mind screamed at her to stay alert. As sleep pulled her under, she whispered to herself, "Please let it be nothing. Please let me be wrong." She awoke late the next morning, the room drenched in sunlight. Her limbs felt heavy, her mouth dry. She rolled over and glanced at the clock, 10:42 a.m. Slowly, she sat up. The camera. She rushed to the bookshelf and retrieved the memory card. Her fingers fumbled as she inserted it into her laptop. The screen flickered, then opened the video file. The first hour showed nothing. Stillness. Quiet. Then, at 2:43 a.m., the doorknob turned. Madeline stopped breathing. On the screen, the door eased open and Hank Hale stepped into her room. He moved like he belonged there. Slowly, deliberately. He stood at the foot of the bed for a long moment, just watching her. Then he peeled the blanket back. Her breath caught in her throat. On the screen, her own sleeping face remained still as stone. Oblivious. Helpless. Hank leaned over and touched her cheek. His hand slid down her neck. Lower. Madeline slammed the laptop shut and ran to the bathroom. She vomited until her stomach was empty and her body shook. There was no more guessing. No more hoping it was just in her head. This was real. This was rape. And it had happened in her own bed, under her own roof, while she was unconscious. And now she had it on tape. Brandon came home earlier than expected. Madeline was in the kitchen, staring blankly at her cold coffee, the flash drive clenched in her hand like a weapon. The moment she heard the front door creak open, her body went rigid. "Mad." His voice echoed down the hallway. "I'm back. Flight got in early. Thought I'd surprise you." She didn't move. Her heart thudded against her ribs like a warning drum. Brandon stepped into the kitchen with a grin, his overnight bag slung over one shoulder. The smile faded the second he saw her face. "What's wrong?" Madeline looked up, eyes glassy and haunted. "We need to talk." His brow furrowed. "Is it about the test results?" She nodded. Brandon dropped his bag and crossed the room. "You're okay though, right? Tell me you're okay." "I'm not," she said quietly. "I tested positive." The air seemed to vanish from the room. Brandon stared at her. "Positive?" His voice cracked. "For HIV?" She nodded again, slower this time, and placed the flash drive on the table between them like it was a loaded gun. "I didn't cheat on you," she whispered. "I've only ever been with you. And I know you didn't cheat on me either." Brandon didn't answer. He just stood there, frozen. Madeline's fingers trembled as she pushed the flash drive toward him. "I didn't know what was happening to me at night. So I set up a hidden camera." He didn't speak. He didn't have to. She could already see the storm brewing in his eyes. "I want you to watch it," she said. "All of it." I can't. I can't watch again." She stood up and walked to the living room, leaving the laptop and the truth behind. 15 minutes later, the silence was broken by the sound of the screen slamming shut. Brandon emerged from the kitchen. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with something primal. He didn't speak. He just grabbed his keys from the hook by the door. "Where are you going?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "To the shop." "Brandon, please don't." "He raped you," Brandon said, voice like broken glass. "That son of a bitch raped you in our house. And you want me to just sit here?" "No, but what?" he snapped. "Let the law handle it. You want to go to court? Sit through depositions? You think I can watch him walk free with a lawyer and a smirk and—" He stopped, fists clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm going to end this." Madeline moved to block the door. "Brandon, Listen to me. If you do something, they'll put you away. You'll go to prison. He looked at her with wild eyes, chest heaving. I love you, he said, quieter now. I can't let him live knowing what he did to you, knowing what he's still capable of. She reached for his hand, gripping it hard. Then don't do this. Don't become something you'll regret for the rest of your life. He stared at her, something shifting behind his eyes. Then, suddenly, he went still. Okay, he said. You're right. I need time. I need to clear my head. Promise me you won't go near him. He kissed her forehead. I promise. Then he left. Madeline stood there, staring at the closed door, pulse hammering in her ears. She didn't believe him. Not for a second. She ran to the window, just in time to see Brandon back out of the driveway and head toward Hale Auto Service. Not speeding, not rushing, just calmly driving into the fire. The moment Brandon's car disappeared down the street, Madeline knew. He wasn't clearing his head. He was making a decision. A final one. She didn't waste time grabbing her coat. Her hands shook as she snatched her keys off the kitchen counter, heart pounding so loud she could barely think. She called his cell, straight to voicemail. Brandon, please, she begged into the phone. Come home. Don't do this. We can go to the police. We have proof. We'll make him pay the right way. Please, don't throw your life away for him. No response. She drove like hell, tires screaming on the turns as she cut through the back roads of Madison County, heading straight for Hale Auto. The sky had turned slate gray, the wind picking up, as if nature itself sensed what was coming. 15 minutes. That's how long it took her to get there. But it felt like a lifetime. The garage sat on the edge of town, tucked behind a row of old warehouses. A rusted sign with peeling paint read, Hale and Son, EST 1998. Brandon's car was parked in front, next to Hank's ancient pickup truck. They were both inside. Madeline's stomach dropped. She sprinted to the workshop doors. They were slightly ajar, creaking on their hinges as she pushed through. Inside, the space was dim, the only light coming from a single bulb hanging above a sedan on a jack. Hank, she called out, her voice echoing off concrete walls. Brandon. No answer. Her eyes adjusted slowly to the gloom. She walked further in, weaving between car lifts and tool carts, passing oil stains and shelves cluttered with parts. Then she saw it. A pair of legs, splayed out beneath the car in the far corner. Jeans stained dark. Boots motionless. Her breath hitched. She moved closer, every step slower than the last. Something glistened beneath the car. Not oil. Blood. Lots of it. And the jack. It had collapsed. The weight of the car had dropped directly onto the man underneath it. Skull. Chest. Crushed like paper. Madeline gasped and staggered backward, slapping her hand over her mouth to keep from screaming. Then a voice behind her. I told you not to come. She spun around. Brandon stood there, his mechanic gloves still on, speckled with grease and something darker. His eyes were hollow, far away, as if his soul had already left the building. What did you do? She whispered. He stared at the car. The jack slipped. Brandon, her voice trembled. Please don't lie to me. He looked at her now, and something in his expression chilled her to the bone. Not rage. Not guilt. Clarity. I set it up, he said flatly. Got him to slide under. Said I needed help tightening a bolt. He was drunk, laughing, joking. Then I knocked the pin loose. Madeline stared at him in horror. You murdered him. I ended him, Brandon corrected. There's a difference. She felt her knees weaken. You don't come back from this. He stepped toward her and gently touched her face. He raped you. In our home. While I was gone. He gave you a disease. He was going to die with dignity? Not on my watch. Sirens wailed in the distance. Faint, but growing louder. I called it in, Brandon said calmly. Anonymous tip. Told them a mechanic had an accident. I'll tell them I came to check on him and found him like this. And me? Madeline asked, voice shaking. You came after me, he said. Worried. You found what I found. You want me to lie? No, he cupped her hand in both of his. I want you to survive. The sirens grew louder, bouncing off the metal walls. You know what they'll do if they find the footage, Brandon said. The court hearings. The headlines. You'll be defined by what he did to you. Forever. Madeline looked at the body under the car, then at the man in front of her. And she realized the man she loved was gone. And in his place stood someone new. Someone who had chosen justice over law. She nodded once. Outside, red and blue lights danced across the building. Okay, she whispered. Let's end it here. Detective Claire Montrose arrived at Hale Auto just as the paramedics were zipping the body bag shut. The early morning sun cast a sterile glare across the cracked pavement. The garage reeked of gasoline, motor oil, and something metallic underneath, blood. Red and slick, dried in streaks beneath the car's crushed frame. Claire stepped out of her unmarked cruiser in black slacks, boots, and a dark blazer over a gray t-shirt. Her badge hung from her neck, and her expression was unreadable behind her aviators. 12 years in homicide had taught her one thing. Accidents rarely looked this convenient. A young officer greeted her at the edge of the workshop. Victim is Hank Hale, age 56. Local business owner. Appears he was working solo. Car jack gave out, dropped the vehicle on top of him. No witnesses. No witnesses, Claire repeated, scanning the scene. His son and the son's fiancée found him, the officer added. They're out back. Shaken up. I'll talk to them. She made her way around the side of the garage where Brandon and Madeline sat on a curb, their backs to the brick wall. Brandon's shirt was stained with grease, his gloves tucked into his waistband. Madeline looked pale, arms folded tightly across her chest like she was holding herself together. Mr. Hale, Claire said calmly. Brandon stood slowly. Yeah, I'm Detective Montrose. Sorry for your loss. She looked at Madeline. You must be the fiancée. Madeline nodded, saying nothing. I understand you two found the body. Brandon nodded. I stopped by to see my dad. He wasn't answering his phone. I figured maybe he fell asleep in the back room, or I don't know. And what did you find? He was under the car. The jack had slipped. He wasn't breathing. There was too much blood. Claire's eyes narrowed slightly. And you didn't try to lift the vehicle? I knew it was too late, Brandon said. His head was crushed. Madeline looked away, biting her lip so hard it turned white. Claire scribbled something into her notebook. What brought you by today? I just got back from a business trip. Wanted to check on him. She turned to Madeline. And you? Madeline's voice was flat. I followed Brandon. I was worried. Why? She hesitated. I'd just gotten some difficult news. I needed him. Claire didn't press, but she caught the flash of tension between them. The way Madeline's eyes wouldn't quite meet Brandon's. The way his jaw kept clenching. She closed her notebook. Mind if I take a look around? Brandon nodded. Of course. Inside, the forensic techs were photographing everything. Tool racks, oil stains, the collapsed jack. Claire circled the scene like a hawk, her eyes picking up on every detail. She stopped at the jack. It was old. Manual. Bent at the base. Why would a pro like Hank use a floor jack instead of the hydraulic lift? She murmured. A tech nearby shrugged. Cheaper? Habit. Claire didn't buy it. Not for a man who'd been working on cars his whole life. She wandered into the back office. Filing cabinets. Spare parts. A bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses on the desk. Half full. Room temperature. She frowned. One glass had a faint lipstick stain. Claire turned back to the tech. Was he drinking? Blood alcohol level came back .09. Enough to impair coordination. She moved back to the car, crouched beside the jack. Studied the crack in the metal. Then looked again at the grease marks on the floor. Too clean. Too linear. Like someone had wiped up something. Something deliberate. Detective, one of the techs called. Found something odd near the tool chest. She followed him to a small black flash drive sitting behind a can of WD-40. Claire held it up to the light. No label. No dust. Recently handled. She didn't say anything. Just pocketed it. Back outside, Brandon and Madeline were still sitting on the curb. Madeline glanced up at her, eyes hollow. We'll need you both to come to the station tomorrow, Claire said, her tone casual. Just to go over statements again. Standard procedure. Brandon nodded. Claire started to walk away, then paused. Tell me something, Mr. Hale, she said, turning back. Did your father often work alone under a car, without safety blocks? Brandon stiffened. All the time. I used to warn him. Of course, Claire said softly. Stubborn men tend to do that. But her gut told her something else. Something darker. This wasn't just an accident. This was a cover. And the real story was buried somewhere beneath all that steel. Detective Claire Montrose sat alone in her office the next evening, lights low, blinds drawn. The building had mostly emptied out, just the hum of vending machines and the occasional muffled voice from night patrol. She slipped the flash drive into her laptop and waited. There was only one file. No label. No metadata. Just a timestamp. She clicked play. At first, the footage was still. A bedroom, dimly lit by moonlight through gauzy curtains. A woman, Madeline, sleeping soundly in the center of the frame. The image was grainy, but clear enough to see the gentle rise and fall of her chest under a white sheet. Claire leaned forward. At 2:43 a.m., the door opened. Hank Hale stepped into the frame, wearing a t-shirt, house pants, moving silently. He paused at the door, watching her. Then, slowly, he crossed the room and pulled back the sheet. Claire's jaw tightened. The screen showed his hand moving to her face, then down her neck. Her gown shifted. Her body remained still, drugged, unconscious. When he climbed into bed beside her, Claire stopped the tape. She sat back in her chair, staring into nothing. There it was, the truth, and with it came a choice. The next morning, Claire returned to the Hale residence. Brandon answered the door, clean-shaven, dressed neatly, as if pretending everything was normal might make it so. "Detective," he said, masking surprise. "Didn't expect you so early. Mind if I come in?" He hesitated a moment, then stepped aside. Madeline was in the kitchen. She froze when she saw Claire, the coffee pot halfway to her mug. Claire nodded. "Morning, Miss Carter." "Detective," she replied cautiously. "Something wrong?" Claire didn't answer. She walked into the living room and took a seat on the edge of the couch, back straight. "I reviewed some evidence last night," she began. Brandon's shoulders tensed. "I found a video," Claire continued, locking eyes with Madeline. "From a hidden camera. I assume it was yours." Madeline didn't speak. Her eyes glistened, but her face stayed calm. Claire turned to Brandon. "You watched it, didn't you?" He said nothing. "I know what Hank did," Claire said, softer now. "And I know what you did after." Brandon opened his mouth, then closed it. Claire leaned forward, voice low. "Do you want to tell me it was an accident?" "Yes," he said quietly. She nodded slowly. "But you and I both know it wasn't." Madeline sat down across from her, setting her mug aside. "What happens now?" Claire took a long breath. "I've seen a lot of monsters in my time, but I've rarely seen one caught so clearly in the act. What Hank did to you was beyond depraved, and you were right to film it. Without that tape, nobody would have believed you." "Do you believe me?" Madeline asked. "I do." Brandon's hand found Madeline's. Their fingers locked. Claire stared at the two of them, young, damaged, trying desperately to hold each other up in the wreckage of something they never asked for. She opened her bag, pulled out the flash drive, and set it gently on the table. "You'll want to destroy that," she said. Brandon looked up, startled. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the jack was faulty. The scene supports it. His BAC was elevated. It could have happened just the way you said." "But you know it didn't," Madeline said. "I do," Claire said. "But I also know the law isn't always equipped for justice. If we go public, your story becomes a headline. His rape becomes your identity. And Brandon becomes a felon." She stood. "I didn't see a flash drive. I didn't find a video. And Hank Hale died in a tragic workplace accident. That's what my report will say." Silence blanketed the room. Madeline's lip quivered. "Why are you doing this?" Claire gave a tired smile. "Because I've seen enough good people broken by bad ones. And sometimes, the best we can do is stop the bleeding." She walked to the door, then paused. "Take care of each other," she said. "And don't make me regret this." Then she was gone. Madeline and Brandon sat in silence, the flash drive still between them. Outside, birds chirped, and the world went on as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Forever. It was a warm Sunday afternoon in late spring. The kind where families picnicked beneath wide oaks, kids chased bubbles near the duck pond, and the air buzzed gently with laughter and lawnmowers in the distance. Detective Claire Montrose sat alone on a park bench in Rosewood Park, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. She wasn't here on a case. No badge. No notepad. Just a woman taking a moment for herself between the chaos. She watched as a toddler tumbled onto the grass and giggled. Nearby, a couple held hands and fed breadcrumbs to the ducks. Quiet. Ordinary. Safe. Then she saw them. Brandon and Madeline, sitting beneath a tree on the far side of the pond. They were partially hidden by a willow's draping branches, but Claire knew them instantly. Brandon's tall frame. Madeline's auburn hair pulled back into a loose ponytail. They looked different. Older, maybe. More grounded. Or maybe it was just the kind of change that came when you carried something no one else could see. They sat in silence for a while, watching the water ripple. Then Brandon leaned in and whispered something in her ear. Madeline laughed softly, a real laugh, then rested her head on his shoulder. He kissed the top of her head. Claire looked away. She didn't want them to see her. Not here. Not like this. They deserved this day, this small, perfect illusion of normalcy. A week after she closed the file, she'd received a letter in her department inbox. No return address. Inside was a flash drive, cracked in two, along with a short note in Madeline's handwriting. Thank you for believing me. We'll never forget it. Neither had Claire. There were cases that stuck with you. Some because of the brutality, others because of the injustice. But this one stayed because of the choice. A choice not written into any law book, not measured by evidence or ruled by judges. She had chosen mercy, not because they were innocent, but because they were human. Because sometimes the system that promised justice only delivered procedure. And because, deep down, Claire knew, if someone had done to her what Hank Hale had done to Madeline, she wasn't sure she wouldn't have done the same thing. Brandon's voice came across the pond in a faint echo. Claire looked up. He was pointing toward the ducks. Madeline was laughing again, eyes brighter now. They had survived. Scarred. Changed. But still standing. That was more than most. Claire stood, tossed her empty cup into the trash, and took one last glance back. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She simply turned and walked away, letting them have their peace. Behind her, the park continued its quiet rhythm. The carousel creaked, a dog barked, and a young boy tossed a paper plane into the breeze. And beneath the willow tree, two people held hands in the silence, their fingers tightly laced. Bound by trauma. Bound by love. Bound by a secret they'd carry to the grave.